The desert sun bled into the horizon, painting Dry Creek in fire and dust. A single rider cut through the glow, his shadow stretching long across the sand. No one knew his name when he crossed the town's wooden arch. No one dared to ask. They just stared, quiet, suspicious, as if the wind itself had carried in trouble. Boots hit the dirt. Spurs clinked sharp. Before we start, subscribe now so you don't miss more incredible stories like this one. Oh, and before we dive in, tell us in the comments where you are watching this video from. We love hearing from you, and always read every message. His face was half hidden beneath a black hat, his eyes colder than the steel at his hip. He looked lost, but not the way a man forgets a road. No. This was the look of a man who had already buried too many sins, carrying ghosts he couldn't shake. The saloon doors groaned as he stepped inside. Smoke curled, whiskey spilled, cards froze mid-game. And then her voice cut the silence, silky, mocking, dangerous. "Cowboy, is your mind always between my legs?" she purred, her lips curling into a daring smile. "Is that why you look so lost?" The room erupted in laughter, but the cowboy didn't blink. His eyes locked on hers. Clara Belle, the saloon songbird with a past darker than midnight. She smiled, but her hand trembled against the piano keys. Because she knew. Men like him never rode in by accident. And Dry Creek was about to bleed for it. The laughter still echoed as Wyatt pushed through the swinging saloon doors, stepping back into the choking desert heat. But Dry Creek wasn't laughing anymore. A silence had settled, heavy as a coffin lid. Eyes followed him from cracked windows and shadowed porches, the kind of stares that measured a man's worth in bullets. A thin trail of smoke curled from a cigar near the sheriff's office. Sheriff Malcolm Harland leaned against the post, hat low, smile sharp. His badge caught the dying sun, but it gleamed like something dirty rather than proud. "Strangers don't last here," Harland drawled, spitting into the dust. "Especially the kind that carry more secrets than words." Wyatt said nothing. Just lit a match, the flame flickering against his scars, before tossing it into the dirt. Their eyes locked, steel against steel, and for a moment the whole town seemed to hold its breath. Then, movement. Clara Belle slipped from the shadows of the saloon, her shawl wrapped tight around her shoulders. Her smile was gone now, replaced with a look that was part fear, part warning. She brushed past Wyatt, close enough for him to catch the tremor in her voice as she whispered, "Don't stay in Dry Creek, cowboy. Ride out before nightfall, or you won't ride out at all." She kept walking, vanishing into the smoke curling from the sheriff's cigar. Wyatt watched her disappear, his jaw tightening, his hand drifting to the gun on his hip. The sun was dying fast, and with it, so was his chance to escape. Night draped itself over Dry Creek like a black veil. Lanterns flickered in the saloon windows, throwing long, restless shadows across the dirt street. Wyatt leaned against the post outside, watching smoke curl from chimneys, listening to whispers die when he passed. He wasn't welcome here. That much was clear. Then he heard it, soft at first, drifting from the saloon, a voice that cut through whiskey haze and dust. Clarabel was singing. Not the rowdy, playful tunes the crowd usually demanded, but something low, aching, filled with longing. Each word wrapped itself around the silence, pulling it tight. Wyatt stepped inside, unnoticed as eyes and ears hung on her every note. She sat at the piano, fingers trembling over the keys, but her gaze wasn't on the crowd. It was fixed on him. Her song spoke of freedom, of chains breaking, of a heart too wild to be caged. And then he saw it, the locket resting against her chest, swinging gently with each breath. When the lantern light caught it, it glinted like a warning. Wyatt's eyes narrowed. He knew that crest, Blackthorne's mark. The room erupted in applause when she finished, but Clara didn't bow. She just closed the piano, lips trembling, eyes locking with his once more. Later, as the saloon emptied, Wyatt caught her by the wrist. That song, he murmured, his voice like gravel. Who were you really singing it to? Clara didn't flinch, but her eyes betrayed her. To the man who can set me free, she whispered, and Wyatt realized he might already be trapped. The moon carved a silver scar across Dry Creek when Wyatt stepped into the alley behind the saloon. The air smelled of spilled whiskey and gun oil, the silence too heavy, too clean. He'd learned to trust silence. It was never empty. A boot scraped. Wyatt's hand twitched toward his Colt. Too late. Shadows lunged, steel flashing in the dark. The first blade cut across his arm, hot and quick. But Wyatt didn't cry out. He slammed an elbow into the attacker's jaw, bone crunching like dry wood. Another came from behind. A rope snaked around his throat, dragging him backward into the dirt. Wyatt's vision blurred as he clawed at the noose, boots kicking dust. He drove himself sideways, smashing the back of his skull into his attacker's nose. Warm blood sprayed across his collar. The last man stepped forward, knife gleaming, breath hissing. "Sheriff says you don't belong, stranger," he growled. "Blackthorne says you don't live to see sunrise." Wyatt spat iron from his mouth and rose, shoulders squared. His hand found the Colt on his hip. The alley lit with thunder. One shot, then two. Silence followed, broken only by the thud of bodies in the dust. Wyatt staggered, blood dripping down his arm. He wiped his mouth, breathing hard, and turned toward the street. At the alley's edge, Clara Belle stood in the lantern glow, her shawl clutched tight. Her eyes weren't surprised. They were broken, resigned. "I told you," she whispered, voice trembling. "Dry Creek doesn't let men like you walk away." And for the first time, Wyatt wondered if she meant to save him. Or bury him. Wyatt sat in the shadows of Doc Ellery's back room, shirt stripped, blood drying where the blade had kissed his skin. The old doctor muttered curses under his breath, stitching him up by lantern light. But Wyatt's mind wasn't on the pain. It was on her. The door creaked. Clara slipped inside, shutting it quick, like a thief in the night. Her shawl was gone, hair unbound, eyes wet with fear she tried hard to bury. "You should have left," she whispered, voice shaking. "The sheriff won't stop. And Blackthorne, he doesn't forgive." Wyatt's gaze dropped to the locket glinting against her chest. He held out a blood-stained hand. "That crest. I know it." For a moment she froze, breath caught. Then slowly she unclasped it, pressing it into his palm. Inside, the faded image of a man stared back, cold eyes, ruthless jaw. Cole Blackthorn. "My past," Clara confessed, tears sharp in her voice. "I belonged to him once. He owned me like he owned this town. I thought I escaped. But men like him never let go." Wyatt's jaw clenched. "So what am I, Clara? A distraction or bait?" Her hand trembled as it brushed his cheek. "Neither. You're the first man who's looked at me and seen more than a cage." Their eyes locked, heat and danger tangled together. For a heartbeat, the world outside vanished, the guns, the sheriff, the ghosts. Just her trembling lips, his scarred hands, and the storm between them. But storms don't last, and both knew this one would break in blood. The storm outside rattled the saloon shutters, but the greater storm was in the room upstairs. Wyatt stood by the window, shirt half-buttoned, the glow of the lantern carving hard lines across his face. Clarabel hovered in the doorway, torn between fleeing and stepping closer. "You should hate me," she whispered. "You should run before I drag you down with me." Wyatt turned, his scarred face unreadable. Running never saved anyone. Silence swelled thick between them, filled with all the words neither dared to say. Then Clara crossed the space in a rush, her hands gripping his collar, her mouth trembling against his. The kiss was wild, desperate, the kind born of fear that tomorrow might never come. Wyatt pulled her in, strong arms wrapping around her waist as if to shield her from every shadow in Dry Creek. For a moment, she let herself believe it, that she could be free in his arms. Her breath hitched as his lips traced the curve of her neck, each touch both a promise and a warning. But passion carried its own kind of danger. As clothes fell away and skin met skin, they weren't just lovers. They were fugitives from a fate already hunting them. Clara's tears salted his lips even as she clung tighter, whispering his name like a prayer and a curse. When it was over, they lay tangled in the lantern glow, hearts racing, fear pressing in from all sides. Wyatt brushed hair from her face and muttered low, "Reckon we just signed our death warrants, darlin'." Clara closed her eyes, whispering back, "Then let's die with our hearts on fire." Outside, thunder rolled, and footsteps gathered below. Dawn had barely brushed the horizon when the pounding on the door came. Clara startled awake, Wyatt already reaching for his gun. But before he could move, the door exploded inward, hinges screaming, lantern light shattering across the floor. Sheriff Harland stepped through, flanked by 2 deputies with rifles leveled. His smile was as sharp as a knife. "Well, well," he drawled, eyes sliding over Clara's bare shoulders, the tangled sheets, Wyatt's hand frozen on the Colt. "Looks like our guest found himself some entertainment." Clara yanked the blanket around her, shame burning her cheeks. But Harland wasn't looking at her with desire. His stare was ownership, pure and venomous. "Wyatt Kane," Harland said, spitting his name like poison. "Accused of murder, theft, and every crime worth hanging for. And now," his gaze cut back to Clara, "harboring fugitives, too." The deputies moved fast, slamming Wyatt to the floor, boots grinding into his back as iron shackles snapped around his wrists. Clara lunged forward. "Stop! He's done nothing!" Harland grabbed her arm, pulling her close enough for her to smell the rot of his breath. "You've always sung for the wrong men, Clara. That ends now." His grip tightened, bruising her skin. "You belong to Dry Creek, and Dry Creek belongs to me," Wyatt roared, muscles straining against the chains, eyes burning murder. But the butt of a rifle cracked against his skull, silencing him in blood. As they dragged him out into the rising sun, Clara's cry echoed through the empty room, and Sheriff Harland whispered to her ear, low and cruel, "By sundown, you'll forget his name." The jailhouse was cold, the stone walls sweating with damp. Wyatt sat chained to the iron bench, blood still caked on his temple from the rifle butt. The sheriff's deputies laughed outside, their boots thudding against the porch as if mocking him with every step. A quiet shuffle came from the corner. Doc Ellery slipped inside, his hands trembling as he carried a satchel. He knelt, dabbing at Wyatt's wound, whispering like a man speaking against his own death. "You shouldn't have come here, Kane," the doctor murmured. "Dry Creek isn't just Blackthorne's ground. It's your ghost come back to life." Wyatt's eyes narrowed. "Spit it out, Doc." Ellery swallowed hard, his wrinkled face pale. "I knew you before you wore that scar. You rode with him once, Cole Blackthorn. You weren't just some drifter. You were his right hand, his brother in blood." Wyatt's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. "You betrayed him," the doctor continued, voice breaking. "Walked away after that massacre in Laramie. Left him bleeding, swore never to ride under his shadow again. But men like Blackthorne, they don't forget betrayal." Wyatt's silence was answer enough. The weight of his past pressed heavy in the cell, thicker than the chains on his wrists. From the street came the jingle of spurs. Clara's voice, pleading, breaking. Harland's laughter cut through it like a blade. Doc Ellery gripped Wyatt's arm. "If you don't leave her behind, Kane, both of you are already dead." Wyatt lifted his eyes, cold and burning. "I don't run from ghosts, Doc. I bury 'em." Night fell heavy on Dry Creek. The streets emptied, the lamps snuffed out early. Fear had a way of locking doors before the stars could rise. From his cell, Wyatt listened to the silence fracture, the thunder of hooves, the cries of startled townsfolk, the crack of rifles shattering the dark. Then came the scream. Clara's scream. Wyatt slammed against the bars, chains biting into his wrists as shadows swarmed outside. The Blackthorne gang rode in like a plague, faces masked, torches lighting the night with fire. Windows shattered, doors kicked in, the sheriff's men scattering like cowards. At the center of the chaos rode Cole Blackthorn himself, broad-shouldered, eyes like cold iron, scars to match Wyatt's own. He swung down from his horse with the grace of a man born to violence. Clara fought, nails raking, voice breaking as two outlaws dragged her into the dirt. Cole only laughed, a cruel sound that carried over the screams. He caught her chin in his gloved hand, forcing her to meet his gaze. "Did you really think you could sing your way free, darlin'?" he sneered. "You're mine. You always were." "Let her go!" Wyatt roared from behind the bars, rattling the cell like a beast in a cage. Cole turned, his smile widening when his eyes locked on Wyatt. "Well, well. The ghost returns. Thought you could hide, brother? Thought you could bury me?" He spat in the dirt, dragging Clara onto his horse as she kicked and cried. "By sunrise, she'll remember who she belongs to. And you, Kane. You'll remember why men don't cross Blackthorne twice." The gang thundered out into the night, Clara's screams fading into the desert wind. Wyatt sagged against the bars, rage flooding his veins hotter than blood. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was war. The cell door groaned open like a coffin lid. Sheriff Harland lay slumped in his chair, throat cut clean, his keys glistening red in the dust. The Blackthorns had left their message plain. No law, no mercy, no hope. Wyatt snatched the keys with trembling hands, the chains clattering free from his wrists. His revolver, tucked beneath Harland's slack hand, felt heavier than it should, like it carried every ghost he'd ever tried to bury. He strapped it tight to his hip and stepped into the night. Dry Creek smoldered. Houses burned in silent ruin, townsfolk peering from shadows with hollow eyes. They all knew what had happened. They all knew where Clara had been taken. Yet none dared follow. But Wyatt did. He found the trail easy enough, hoofprints dug deep into the sand, drops of blood scattered like breadcrumbs beneath the moon. Clara's struggle marked every step. A torn ribbon snagged on a mesquite branch, a single boot print where she must have fought to break free. Wyatt crouched, fingertips brushing the dirt. "Hold on, darlin'. I'm comin'." The desert stretched endless, wind howling like the dead. Coyotes watched with hungry eyes, their howls echoing his rage. Every step forward felt like a descent into hell, and Wyatt welcomed it. He wanted the fire. He wanted the reckoning. Up ahead, smoke curled against the night sky, a campfire. The Blackthorns weren't far. Wyatt rose, jaw set, revolver heavy in his hand. His shadow stretched long across the sand. He was done running. By sunrise, blood would answer blood. The Blackthorn camp burned bright against the desert night, lanterns swaying from wagon posts, firelight throwing shadows of men sharpening knives and cleaning rifles. Clara's muffled sobs carried just beyond the circle of flames, tied to a post like a trophy. Wyatt crouched low on the ridge, heart pounding, revolver steady in his hand. Every instinct screamed caution, but Clara's cry cut through the fear like a blade. He slid down the slope, boots silent in the sand, until he was at the edge of the fire's glow. Cole Blackthorn sat at the center, whiskey bottle in hand, laughter curling from his lips as his men jeered. The scar down his cheek glistened in the firelight, his eyes locked on Clara as if she were already conquered. "Tomorrow," Cole drawled, "we ride her back through Dry Creek. Let the town see who owns her. Let the Kane boy rot in his cage." Wyatt stepped into the firelight. "Not tonight, Cole." The laughter died. Guns scraped from holsters, boots shifted, hands twitched toward steel. Clara's eyes widened, her lips trembling on his name. "Wyatt." Cole rose slow, a predator savoring the moment. So the ghost found his courage. He spread his arms wide, revolver loose at his side. "Come on then, brother. Let's finish what we started." The camp erupted. Bullets screamed, fire kicked sparks sky high, horses shrieked and tore free of their tethers. Wyatt's revolver spat thunder, each shot finding its mark, men collapsing into the dirt. He fought his way forward, closer, closer to Clara, until only Cole stood between them. smile sharp as broken glass. The desert held its breath. Brother against brother. Gun against gun. The desert sun bled gold across the horizon, illuminating two figures standing alone in the scorched dust. Wyatt Kane and Cole Blackthorn faced each other, eyes locked, revolvers drawn, every muscle taut with hatred and memory. Clara's trembling form was just behind Wyatt, bound but watching, heart hammering in terror. "End of the line, brother," Cole spat, his voice raw with past betrayals. "This town, this woman, you'll leave with neither." Wyatt didn't flinch. Sweat and blood streaked his face, but his voice was calm, steady. "I ride out with her. That's all that matters." The shots came fast, echoed through the canyon. Dust exploded around their boots. Wyatt's revolver cracked twice, and Cole staggered, a crimson bloom spreading across his chest. But he wasn't done. He lunged, fist colliding with Wyatt's jaw, teeth gritting against pain. Clara screamed, wrenching at her bonds. Wyatt threw her free, spinning into a final shot. Cole fell, eyes wide with disbelief, and silence swallowed the desert. Wyatt's chest heaved, the taste of blood and gunpowder thick in his mouth. Clara ran to him, tears streaming, arms wrapping tight around his scarred frame. "I thought I lost you," she whispered, voice raw. "You'll never lose me," he murmured, brushing her hair back, eyes still scanning the horizon for danger. Together, they mounted Wyatt's horse. Dust rose in their wake, sun blazing behind them. Dry Creek shrank to a memory of fire and betrayal, its ghosts left behind in the sand. As they rode into freedom, hearts still pounding, scars still fresh, one truth lingered. In the West, love is born in danger, tempered in fire, and sometimes only the brave survive. Wyatt Kane and Clara Belle fight for love and survival in deadly Dry Creek. Passion, danger, and betrayal collide in the Wild West. Subscribe to Wild West Eternal Love for more thrilling tales of romance and danger.